Well, welcome everyone, and please, oh, that's fantastic. So just that little bit of sharing, who you are, who's here, and the chat will just continue to scroll a little bit. There may be some names that are maybe a bit unfamiliar to some of you, but today we have a really nice mix. There's, primarily, of course, the projects, and we've got some members of the FAC MHPIF team joining as well. So fantastic. So game plan for today. Same scenario, just a couple of parts. Next slide, please. Couple of parts to the webinar. I was chuckling with the team this morning about the two parts that we have sort of a short bit on almost brainstorming around this early engagement beyond the MHPIF community, and the reason for that being our collective recent public launch. But I was chuckling with the team about, okay, it's going to feel like, yeah, we're putting in a little bit of time before we can actually get to the infographics, which I think hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at a couple of the models. So really look forward to our discussion on that. So that's it, basically. I'll abbreviate, keep short the first part, but without compromising the input that anyone would like to make on that, and then move on to the part two. All right, so a little bit of framing for the part one. I'm just going to briefly touch on, is how I sort of typically think about kind of introducing sort of any topic. Why this, why now, and how. Nice thing is that rhymes as well. But the why this, just to sort of remind us, the long term, which we had some discussion about, particularly, most directly, I'd say in relation to our conversation about the needs assessment that the Hub had done, about the importance of sort of warming up the environment, this building the system supports for the sustaining, the scaling of MHPIF project approaches and otherwise. So kind of a long-term investment, from engaging with others beyond this community is for that long-term purpose. Initially, I really tend to, I think sometimes get teased a little bit about sort of Barb baby steps Riley, but just really thinking about what are those short-term needs that help us build towards the long term. So in the very short term, creating awareness of the MHPIF and the Hub, building sort of awareness and interest in mental health promotion more broadly, variably understood by most groups, or not even on the radar all the time of the, in relation to the mental health continuum. And then, helping other people beyond this immediate community who have shared interests, exploring or having them identify themselves and be able to learn with and from yourselves and us as part of this child and youth mental health promotion community. So that's the why, a focus on system, initial system engagement. The why now is the timing in relation to the public launch of the MHPIF and different groups of us individually. And also with the upcoming annual symposium, first annual in January 2021, for our MHPIF community. And so some of the intel, some of that early engagement, whether it's inviting people to join us as discussants, as speakers, etc., we definitely want to make sure we're sort of tapping into your interests and needs. And then the how, as I mentioned, baby steps, incremental, start where we are, always guided by the why. So the purpose and what we're trying to accomplish. So where we thought we'd take this is, the Hub has been kind of noodling this for quite some time. And, you know, we keep sort of almost, I don't want to say stepping back, but it's sort of taking stock on what is going to add the most value. So the next slide is actually just posing two really brief questions, but this is what we'd like to spend just even, you know, even like 2 or 3 minutes on each of these, just to, you know, sort of give you a chance in a way, just to sort of throw whatever ideas come to mind in the moment about these, which will actually... So, so what we'll do is we'll just, again, talk briefly about these two questions, and they're purposely very bounded, very specific, and are truly going to inform more of this sort of, I call it noodling, thinking through what the, you know, what some of these early steps might be for the system engagement. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Technology Extraordinaire, Eric, to, well, and everybody to launch Menti with the instructions that are on the screen. And Eric, are there any other instructions for this? Like, it's the link is the link in chat?
Oh, it's not, but I can paste it there for sure. Just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, you can either connect using your desktop or your cell phone, whichever might be easier for you, as we've done before. And yeah, if you need to, just go to menti.com and put in that 7-digit code. I'm just grabbing the link right now.
Oops. Yeah.
So the direct link, sorry.
So if you're connected already, you can be thinking about, you know, just sort of the evolution of, you know, the project so far, just even naming. I mean, it's just, you know, factual information actually about some of the individuals, organizations that you've actually found yourself reaching out to for, be it support, information, collaboration, etc. Like, just, you know, it sort of starts to identify some of these, you know, some of the sort of members of a very diverse community that focuses on mental health promotion, either in the foreground or the background. And so that's what we want to see, just some free-flowing, fluid sharing of, you know, at this moment in time, sort of what's kind of evolved for you, some of these individuals and organizations that you've sort of reached out to in your community. So perfect. Okay, so there's the question. Oh, fantastic. And there's already some responses in there. So what organizations have you reached out to or plan to, right? It can be, oh, we intend to, for information, for guidance, or awareness of what you do. And of course, this will relate to, okay, what are the, you know, this is about building those sort of system supports for the longer term, and who we might engage in the short term with the symposium and otherwise. So fantastic, we're getting some responses in there. And I know this is kind of putting in time before the infographics, but I won't move on until there's at least 10 ideas in here. That's a pretty low bar, actually. Okay, so we've got all of the provincial governments, the Indian residential school history and dialogue. Eric, can you help me out with the...
Yes. That second one there is regional tables that include or are made up of stakeholders of organizations that are working in those mental health programs for.
Fantastic.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. Maybe I had people going around. How do you add something to this?
Once you follow that link, there should be a place for you to enter in a response to the question. And
Okay, I'm on an iPad, so maybe it's different.
Huh,
Hmm.
okay.
just a sec, I'll see if I can get some more specific instructions there. But of course,
Okay.
I mean, feel free to, if you have a response you'd like to share aloud, that is also.
Exactly. And we'll capture that in the notes in chat, etc. So just the ones that are coming in. So the Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Center from UBC, Health Promotion Department. So, you know, provincial governments, New Directions, MANSO, the NCEs, Networks of Centers of Excellence. So NCEs, not, what's not meant there is the, or maybe in addition, National Collaborating Centers. Just want to make sure we have the, you know, we've got the right organizations there as well. So Bishop's University, Brock University, schools, social service orgs. Okay, yep. And you know what? Some of the things like elders councils, etc. I mean, if even being more specific with those, so we know who that can actually really help. Which, you know, which ones potentially. CIHR, yeah, there's a lot of cross cutters with CIHR, Institute of Human Development, Child and Youth Healthcare. Oh, that's different. Okay. From Harvard University, a center there, School Mental Health Ontario. Fantastic. You know, they're part of our Hub Resource Collaborative as well. Advisory committees. Okay. Canadian Mental Health Association. And the youth programs. Okay. Schools, community organizations within different provinces. Okay. This is great. I mean, it's, you know, if we can start to think about this as sort of building out sort of from the core, the MHPIF, and it is that whole sort of cultivating of a receptive environment for, you know, things that if the hub can support that, awesome, because that's what we heard expressed, your expressed interest before, and something where we could add value and will only enrich the learning sort of within this community. Okay, so do we have at least 10? That was my bar. I think we do.
Yep.
Is there anybody, I'm just going to pause before we move on. Is there anybody who, I mean, just a couple seconds, be it in Menti? Well, actually, why don't we move on to the next question in Menti, and any other responses exactly in chat. Thank you. Yeah. There will inevitably be, you know, sort of, oh yeah, I didn't mention. So please populate chat with those, and we use that information in our event briefs. So the second question, what would you like to know about child and youth mental health promotion in Canada to help you with your work? So this too is about, you know, thinking about what are some important voices, etc. So here we have some stuff. What form of promotion is most effective? So a little bit about that sort of evidence-based approaches. Are children and youth working in collaboration with this promotion? If not, why not? Fantastic questions. Examples of youth doing mental health promotion in Canada to inspire other youth. So that real focus on youth serving youth. And government agencies interested in mental health promotion. Are conversation camps still legal? Conversion, sorry. Conversation camps would be great. Are conversion camps still legal throughout Canada? Is there a youth advisory component to the KDE Hub? Insights into, oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. That, you know, our initial stance on that is actually that, you know, again, one of our core commitments is in honoring the leadership and contributions of others, and not, you know, that the projects have the direct relationships with youth. We can certainly come back to that. We don't have separate advisory structures with that voice right now. Insights into what has been very effective in communities with designated CYMHP. Again, what is the, you know, evidence? What is the effectiveness? A description of the makeup dynamic of the population. And this is, yeah, okay. That actually is a nice segue in a bit to some of the infographic information, but then adding on to that, the evidence base. Comprehensive list of regional local organizations that work with children and youth. Wowzer, like that. Yeah, that's you know, there's some interesting sort of discernment with that. We've got a whole sort of scanning protocol that, you know, it can be a full-time job for 6 people, and it's real discernment about, you know, and this list from you is actually going to be helpful to refine some of the scanning and engagement that we're able to do. Any other thoughts here?
One more in the chat, Barb, is just around who is working on youth-led relevant education reform.
Perfect.
That was shared in the chat.
Yes, yes, yes. And actually, yeah, above that too.
Yes, that is for the previous question.
Oh, that's
about,
the previous question.
Yeah,
Yep.
some of the organizations that information has been shared with. And then this next submission to this question is around the creation and maintenance of strategic
partnerships. Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Any other top of mind thoughts? Do we have at least 10? I'm a real taskmaster, aren't I? I think probably, okay, what are some good ways to promote the work we are doing that may help ensure some nice long-term impacts are made as a result of establishment of a valuable program for our community? Awesome. You know what? That actually is probably a nice segue into the discussion. Oh, we've got another. Okay, Deschooling Society by Yvonne. Okay, yep, a resource that's recommended there in the chat. Okay, so fantastic. I mean, even this is sort of warming us up to you know, just that sort of thinking about some incremental, meaningful, realistic sort of engagement. What you do individually, we don't want to muck, you know, with that and step on any toes. What we do want to do is, you know, support where possible, and particularly on things that are most challenging for any of you to do individually. So that's really underlying the, you know, those questions and inviting that conversation today. So thank you. Fantastic. All right. So now we'll move on to, you've put in your time on part 1. Now we're going to move on to part 2. And I think I'm turning things over to Mary Alice. She's a quiet leader. I'm kidding. Unmute, Mary Alice. There you go.
I'm sorry, I thought I had unmuted. I've changed the order of my screens, and so my cursor keeps going in the wrong direction. I have to reverse things in my mind, so sorry about that. Here I am. You can hear me now, correct? Thank you, great. So, infographics. So an infographic is a collection of imagery with minimal text, and it gives an easy to understand overview of topics. So think of it as a visual narrative of sorts. You've probably are familiar with what they look like because they are increasingly common communication. And so many of us find that a picture is worth 1,000 words, as the old adage goes, or for our social media world, a visual is worth at least 280 characters. So inspired by what we heard from projects during early co-design sessions and the needs assessment process, the Hub Secretariat has set out to develop an infographic for each MHPIF project. These infographics will be used on the Hub website as a complement to the project profiles that are already there, and they can also be used by projects however you wish. So before we look a little closer at the first example of the infographic, I'd like to do a few shout outs and expressions of appreciation. The Needs Project has graciously worked with the Secretariat to develop an initial infographic to serve as a template for us. And so many thanks to Mahmoud and Sonia for their fabulous input and their enthusiasm. They've been super to work with. And from the Secretariat, Eric did early developmental work and has interfaced with the designer and the Needs Project. And Annetta and Sarah Lemieux, and Sarah is a grad student on placement with us with the Hub for a while. Annetta and Sarah have been reviewing project descriptions to develop draft text for the remaining 19 projects. More on this process very soon, But for now, many thanks to Eric, Annetta, and Sarah for taking up the challenge of conveying rich, vibrant, complex projects in a very few well-chosen words. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about the process. As mentioned, we recently moved from the concept to template by working with the example of the project undertaken by the Needs organization. We are working with a designer and we'll be giving this template a close look in just a minute. But now we are well into the process of drafting the content for all projects. Now, note that while all the infographics will contain some common elements, each will also reflect the uniqueness and distinctiveness of each project. So we have been giving due attention to this on a project by project basis. And in the coming month, this is our goal for November, we'll be reaching out to each project individually to share and refine the content. And be forewarned, it won't be the pretty version that you receive first, just a boring old word table. But just remember that that plain old word table caterpillar will turn into a beautiful butterfly with the help of some graphic design magic. So once the text is finalized or near final, we will pass it off to the graphic design company that we work with to create a draft infographic. Then you'll have a second opportunity to make any changes to text or visuals before it is finalized. We hope to get the content as final as possible in the first round, but we won't hesitate to go back to the designer with tweaks to text or pictures once you see it all put together. Sometimes you get a different view on some of the text elements when you see it in relation to the pictures, and we understand that. So for many of us, December is associated with gift giving and joy. And if all goes well, we should have the infographics to you before the holiday break. So if everyone's ready, let's look at the infographic and walk through some of the elements. Here's the French and English version of the Needs infographic. So this has been through an iteration with the folks from Needs. And this is a one-page overview, and true to the infographic style and the notion of at a glance, it emphasizes visuals and leads the reader through several elements that will be consistent across projects. We wanted to show you what the whole thing looks like. I know that the text on your screen will be impossible to read. So let's just look a little closer at the elements that make up the infographic. We'll start with the header, which includes the project name and the lead organization logo or project logo if it's available. The block uses a color from the project or organization's branding palette, and the designer will propose a visual. Then we move on, and next we come to the real heart of the infographic. This is a brief project description, which is essentially a quite simplified theory of change. It starts with a statement about the need that is driving the project, answering the question, why do we need to act? Then this is followed in the left column by 2 or 3 points that focus in on key activities. In simple terms, this describes what you do. And we'll aim all of this section at sort of lay language, plain language, but understanding that it's people that may have some background, but we will be striving for more plain language in these sections. Then you see to the right the expected outcomes, again, just 2 or 3 bullet points. The iconography chosen is meant to reflect the statements and will vary to match the text. Next slide, please. Next, we move to a section that locates you within Canada, provides contact information, and invites others to learn more through your website and social media. Now, note that the location on the map will include implementation sites as well as the location of the lead organization. So in this example, the implementation site coincides with the location of the lead organization. But if you're working in multiple locations or provinces, attention will be drawn to this, and there'll be a pin for where the lead organization and for the contact coincides with the contact information. So this element essentially can be shaped to meet your situation and ways of connecting. And then we move down to the footer, and the footer includes 2 elements. First is the information about the MHPIF and the KD Hub. So this element helps to define the set of infographics and is what brings some continuity across the infographics. The footer and the document ends with logos, project logos, partner logos, the hub logo, the FAC logo. So for this example, you see that there are 7 logos. You may have fewer or more, but the designer will do their best to make your assortment work in this space. You'll also note there at the bottom that we've included a time frame, fall 2020, to open the door to future updates and to give the reader the context of the time reference. So this is the infographic, and now we're going to move to some discussion. So we're just going to open the floor, so you can feel free to unmute yourself, to share your thoughts, or use the chat function, whichever you prefer. Open to both, and both going on simultaneously. If you're going to be using chat or unmuting your line, feel free to use either French or English, and with the French, we'll get some support from Eric for translation. So let us know if you have any initial impressions or feedback, and if you have any ideas about how your project might use your infographic, or even how the hub or FAQ might use the whole set of infographics. So jump right on in.
So no Menti on this one. So this is more so, unmute yourselves, chime in, use chat, etc. I mean, a lovely set of comments emerging there. Thank you. Please don't be shy to, also, think about and offer up, are there big gaps or anything that you really think might be improved? This is the time in this early sort of developmental stage.
I really like it. I think it's easy, a great format, covers everything that I would want it to cover for our project. So
Right.
Yeah, it's really lovely, and actually inspired us to think it would be fantastic to have a video with maybe with our youth, to do it as in that format as well, as a companion piece.
That's a great idea.
So
Just
there are,
wondering,
go
if
ahead.
we might, sorry about that, Eric. Just wondering if we might, like, we have a logo with a color scheme and that sort of thing. Just wondering if we can use those in the infographic.
Yep,
And maybe
absolutely.
put it
And
like,
that was
sorry.
one of the questions asked as well in chat, is just about how modifiable the template colors are, and who should you send any logos to that are relevant either for color scheme or for inclusion in the footer. Yes, absolutely. That would be awesome if you have relevant logos either for your project or the organization that that your project represents, to send along to either the KD Hub at uwaterloo.ca email address, or to myself, for example. That would be very helpful. But again, remember that we will have a couple of iterations, so we'll be in contact anyways. If the question of colors comes up at either of those stages, we can bring it up then as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, the goal is to meet both the need of the MHPIF as a whole and the projects individually. At the Hub, we're often thinking about both within projects and across projects. So we deliberately went at the design with the idea that it would fit a variety of color schemes. It can be adaptable. You can make sure it looks like your product, and it also belongs to a set of all the entire MHPIF. So we're really excited about what the graphic designer did with that. So definitely, like, you'll receive your draft and really treat that as a draft. We want it to be your words. Understand that we've tried to take it, the richness of your project and put it in plain language, but your project, we're working from proposals, project descriptions, a number of things, building in information about what's happened in terms of the pandemic and that kind of thing. So we're trying to represent what's happening in your project as it is now, but we won't get that right. And that's why we want to work with you. But we didn't want you to have to start from a blank page. So we'll provide you some provisional text. If you also have ideas about what some of the icons might look like, we can feed that back to the designer as well. But they do have a pretty rich library of icons and did a really good job on that first one and finding things that match the text. There's a question here about, is there space for quotes, testimonials from young people? That's an interesting one. We'll try to keep it to fairly standard size. So, but we can work within the space we have to see what, we could definitely see how that could be approached. Comment too about moving to an online platform for our project. That this infographic will be good for that and to share within our community. That's great.
Yeah, and I think, I believe it was mentioned, but just reinforcing that with each project, we'll work first and foremost in the language that the project generally works in, and then translate either to English or to French as needed, so that we'll have two versions of each project infographic.
Oh, there's also a question about, can we put our major partners' logos on? And that definitely, that's the goal, is to include partners. The example that we have on the screen, there are 7 logos. And so you can see how much space that leaves. I think you could probably fit in a few more if you got creative. But yeah, definitely. And I think also as well, if there's only 3 logos, if that fits your situation, then we'd make that space look full enough, not look like a big white empty space. We just have them scaled appropriately. Are there any more comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments. We're excited about these and glad that you share some of that excitement. So do expect to hear from Eric and Annetta in the next few weeks when your template's ready to be looked at. They'll be in touch and have a conversation about it. And then hopefully we'll be able to gift you with some holiday treats. So that, I think I will, if there's no more comments, I'll turn it back over to Barb.
Okay, so just on that, with the sort of process and timeline for refining these, I just want to pause briefly and sort of invite any sort of questions or preferences, or that any of you have, like just thinking about, thank you, yes, on this timeline, November being sort of the what we were thinking as sort of the ideal window of time to finalize the content for these. So just any concerns or questions you have about that. We have something from okay, will the people on the infographic be adjusted based on the population being served for each project? I mean, my short answer is going to be yes. Like this is where the sort of deep connection to what's most important to each of the projects and adapting and selecting the different graphics is really important. So there's no, one size or one visual sort of fits all here. So that's the intent. And, others on the team, feel free to chime in about discussions with the design group.
Yeah, I mean, the design group has a bank of icons, and they will use the information we provide to them to make some suggestions about icons. And then, of course, when that draft comes back to the projects, and if there are any specific comments or requests or ideas for different icons or additional icons, that's of course welcome as well. We can always go back to the designer on that one.
Wonderful. Okay. Any other things on your minds about these? I mean, pretty cool sharing of it. It seems like, these are on target, sort of hitting the mark. I mean, I guess it's in part creating a mark, because it's not as if, there was any standard for this. So, and it really is responsive to what we heard from you very early on, but by golly, things change over time, and, every project develops its own communications, etc. So I really, want to thank you for your initial comments. I also just want to reinforce once again, as you're reviewing your own content, sort of thoughts settle a little bit more sometimes about, this would be even more useful for my project if this was a component or something. And so, we've tried to lay out the parameters of scope and scale, amount of text, etc. We'd like to stay true to, this kind of graphic, and yet please don't sort of stifle your own questions. Think about the usefulness sort of for you. Our plan is to absolutely have these on the Hub website, as members from a broader community with shared interests with the MHPIF. As they come, we really want them to have that, well, quite frankly, a wow factor for each of the projects that are funded through this program. That wow factor around, okay, we get it. There are individual projects that may be of interest to some people, and we're nesting that within the collective, and that added extra value from being part of a collective, that yes, we're learning with and from individual projects, and then across this pretty amazing set that has been selected for the MHPIF. So, and I think there were some comments about, I can see how we could build on this infographic, like, almost have a suite of communications, like links to videos and other things. So, as we move on together, sort of throughout the next year as well, towards the completion of phase 1, any links and other things that you can imagine might be helpful for you, that we can place sort of on the website, on the Hub website, just in case that's the first time that somebody might, become aware of who you are and what you do. So let's just keep that flow of information happening, not to duplicate what all of you are doing, but just to provide those meaningful links, and that initial Hub as sort of a one-stop shop for what's going on with the MHPIF sort of overall, these pretty amazing projects that are funded as part of it. So I'm just trying to nudge in those directions, so that it might you might come up with creative ideas and ways that we can support you.
One other question that's in the chat just now is whether these infographics will be printable or just electronic. In short, they can be both. They can be printed. Right now, the kind of format we're going with is full legal size paper. So you would need to have a specific type of printer to actually be able to print it. Or if you wanted to print, for example, a high quality type of version of it, that would be done through perhaps some sort of design company or something like that. But that being said, they are being created with both in mind, with both those options in mind.
Any other questions on your mind about these?
Barb,
Yeah.
it's Vicky here from the MHPIF. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good.
I was just going to say those will be really great for us also internally to for our colleagues to know what our projects are. And so those are going to be great for us too internally.
Fantastic, Vicky. Thank you. Okay. And I'm not sure if everybody would know Vicky, a key member of the Ottawa-based for the MHPIF team within the Public Health Agency. So That's great. I mean, there are all these different communities that will have different, interests in the MHPIF. So it's really great to hear. I mean, it's challenging with communications, as I think we all know. You can never have, I mean, if you have 500 audiences, you have no audience. And so, some strategic communications can actually, be relevant for more than a single audience. So hopefully a little bit of a hybrid here without compromising the benefits for any one group. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else there, okay. So fascinating. I think I should have had the bar a little bit higher. I'm not that, just as we come to a close here, Eric, you have to move on. But I think I probably should have had the bar a little bit higher for the number of responses for the early system engagement. I was really feeling kind of the pressure to, okay, let's get through that, and we'll get to the infographics. But anyway, just in sort of bringing our time together to a close, we thought we'd just provide sort of a couple of brief updates, and certainly cue you to the hub update. Oh, Annetta, did you mention that earlier? Sending out the hub update earlier today?
Look in your emails, it's there.
Yeah.
So exciting.
I couldn't resist teasing you there. So the other, and truly there is, we have a few minutes if people are willing to invest them, but we're very open. On the first update about the annual symposium, you all, I mean, we'll keep sort of communicating on this, but it's a virtual event booked for January 25th, the evening, 26th and 27th during the day. And we will actually be sharing, again, just those sort of parameters around time, and, sort of early plans as they develop, with some iterations to make sure, you have a chance to, provide some input to shape this, to make it most useful. And yet what we've heard from you is we're okay with you doing some homework and coming to us with some suggestions. And so, we're just always sort of navigating that space, because we don't want to be presumptuous about, sort of the focus and so on. We also want to make sure there's, some really good planning, because I think, as we all know, those events that go well and, we're helpful, they only, are that way because of some pretty darn good prep that goes into them. So we really feel committed to that. So the annual symposium, you will see this, spoiler alert, in the hub update. I mean, the overall sort of unifying theme, if I can put it that way, and again, based on so many different sources of input, being, the MHPIF in context. And, I think, so much of what I hear is that now it's almost like context is equated with, or is equal to, COVID. The pandemic is absolutely part of the context, and yet there are many other contexts that are so relevant for our short-term work and our long-term aspirations as well, even beyond the time frame for the MHPIF and the different phases. So the MHPIF in context, about the people, about the positioning, about the potential of that influence, and about the pandemic. But, it is that sort of, even in a really safe place of exploring, what do we even mean by these different contexts? And so that's just early development. We're sort of at the stage of, we'll put together a little bit of a almost a scaffolding, the structure for possible agenda, some of the sort of main objectives that we've translated based on input so far, and we'll absolutely share those with you. Now, this is one just, if people wouldn't mind a little bit of a yay or nay on this or other suggestions. our thinking is that, even though like with the online forums that we have on the website, we're actually thinking of having, a forum on the annual symposium. Again, just a one-stop shop for, okay, what are the resources that people can maybe add to that, or that we're curating for that event? The agenda, basically different folders that, you can look at for awareness, provide some input, etc. But just that there is one home for all of those sort of planning documents and invitations for input. So having that on an online forum, I just like a little bit of, feedback in whatever way that you choose to do that, be it through chat or unmute, say a few words, use the Zoom reactions for, thumbs up or down, whatever. But just whether that as a home, okay, for some of the planning materials for the annual symposium, whether that would work for you. Okay. Those are awfully large thumbs, aren't they? Okay, seeing they're all in the upward direction, the ones that I've seen. Have your vote. Okay, okay. So I'm not seeing sort of concerns with that. Are there any? I mean, it's fine if there are. Okay, okay. You're all getting to know your little Zoom reaction buttons. I'm sure you're very familiar with your Zoom reaction buttons. Okay. All right. Other team members, are there any other sort of questions about or thoughts on the annual symposium that would be useful to share here? Anything I've overlooked?
One thing we are planning on doing, because it is quite sad that we won't all be able to get together in person, and that of course was the original intention of the annual symposium. And there is, you've been to probably enough conferences and meetings to know that there's so much that comes with face-to-face. But one thing that we are going to try to do, because we are going to do virtual, which also has some really good things about it too. And so we're going to try to harness those good things about it. And so what it may mean is that more of your team members can attend the annual symposium.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be in person, you would have been sending one, maybe two representatives. And so now you have the opportunity to engage a lot more people. So that's one thing to start thinking about it, is who on your team might be able to benefit from it. You may also be wondering, and certainly as organizers, this is something on our mind, is that when you're trying to engage people from BC out to the Maritimes,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at a time changes that span 4.5 hours. And we're even considering some speakers who come from outside those time zones as well. So I just want to assure you that as we plan, we're going to be respectful of your time and try to do things within your workday as much as we can. We are asking for a little bit of your time on the first evening. And it's typical of conferences, they often kick off with a bit of a ceremony and welcoming time that may be in the evening. So you may have some of that depending on your time zone, but we are going to try to respect your workday as much as we can. And we're going to do some of that because with the virtual, you have the benefit of doing both synchronous sessions and asynchronous. So there may be some things that people will be doing in their own time, but then coming for the discussion part in real time. So we hope that you'll be able to dedicate the 2.5 days to this and really have a sense of stepping away from your usual routine, that you've attended an event, and we're planning in that direction. One of the things we're doing is it's going to be on the Whova platform. I don't know if you've been to other conferences that may have used the Whova platform, but we're hoping that consolidates everything in one place, and it sort of replaces, it may have been before at, I don't know, the Hampton Inn or whatever the conference venue might have been, but now we're going to have a new venue. So very open as we plan this for your input on the event as a whole, and as some of the sessions developed, for you to be engaged even in session level planning. That'd be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, those are really helpful additional points. I mean, I think that perhaps only sort of two in addition. Well, Mary Alice, you mentioned this, but the difference between sort of a hodgepodge of sessions versus an event. And that even inspired, you know, like the unifying theme. This is not a concentrated set of webinars to happen at the annual symposium. It's a different quality and engagement experience, you know, together. And so, you know, that's what we see as part of our job in really thinking that through, that it's not this, oh, you know, I've got 45 minutes, I'm going to hop into this and hop out of that, but it's an event. And really part of that is the gifting, you know, as much as possible, you're the gifting yourselves with the, you know, that dedicated time. There's plenty, because of the time zones that Mary Alice, what you were describing, you know, be assured enough time sort of bookending days that it's not, you know, 24/7 into the event. And so bookending the day, we know that everybody, you know, has their day-to-day lives and so on. And so, you know, it's not saying 24/7 times 2.5 days to dedicate to it. So I guess the other part to that, yes, it is sort of removing all of us from kind of the day-to-day, what we're all doing. And one of the other things that we're paying attention to is both short-term and longer-term relevance. So it's not that everything is going to be, oh, you know, sort of, this is so 5 years from now or 2 years from now. I mean, again, it's all about kind of the short-term focus and actions that are anchored by, and where is it that we're going? So again, that's a little bit of a gift we can give ourselves to think beyond present day, but not ignore present day, and sort of honing up our anchors for what's next, and particularly in an uncertain environment, right? And so, and that's all part of MHPIF in context and the work that each of us is doing in context. So I think enough said on that, but hopefully enough, you know, that gives you a flavor for how we're sort of thinking about the structure and focus of the event. Okay, and of course, I'm not going to share anything else with the Hub update because I think that went out today, and there are lots of little items to focus on there. And of course, we invite any of your feedback on those as well. I guess one thing I will say about it, you'll see in the update that that, you know, our welcome talks about, it's our first one that is since the public launch. And this actually is something we paid quite a bit of attention to, that the Hub updates previously were for, you know, those of us on the call here on the webinar, that it was for the MHPIF community only. Now there are other people who've signed up for, you know, for the Hub updates. And so again, you know, the same information and the same format is not going to work sort of for everybody, but we've really tried to pay attention to that broader audience without compromising some of these specific little cues, reminders. You'll see the little sticky notes for MHPIF projects per se. So again, we're experimenting, and hopefully not too far off, but again, you can always adapt. So question about, okay, thank you for the question and for the response. When do you expect to send us the symposium agenda? And about mid-month in November. And again, you know, we actually will, you know, be doing those iterations with you. It won't be, okay, here's your final agenda. However, it will be a sufficient structure that there's, you know, something solid to respond to. Lots happening in November, isn't there? Okay, all right. So just in closing, yes, and I mean, registration details, that doesn't come with cost. That's registration details, just be part of it. And I think, Mary Alice, your point about the, you know, let's capitalize on, you know, the virtual nature of the event, and particularly for project partners, youth engaged, like it would be fantastic. And actually that's something we'll want to learn from you, is who you'd like to be part of it, because that actually will shape some of the sessions as well, about you know, where we may place more or less emphasis. So maybe giving that a little bit of thought, and we'll try to cue that question too in our initial seeking of, you know, any input, because that actually will have a big impact, you know, who's attending. All right. And that's, of course, an iteration between the agenda and the people, so that we'll find the sweet spot with you. I know that. So we'll conclude for the day. You know that there will be, I mean, this is where, you know what, in an uncertain world, it's kind of nice to have just a few things that are a bit predictable. So one predictable thing is a hub event brief that comes after each event, and the recording. So hopefully those are reasonable, short, succinct resources for you. And our team will be reaching out about the infographic content and otherwise. So with that, I do want to thank everybody for joining today. And oh, I wish I could see more of your faces, because, you know, even if we're not all saying bye, it's nice to, there's a few waves. That's what we need. Oh, you're so precious. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's really been a nice sort of chat today, and oh, bless you. Look at that. Aw. All right. Signing off for the day. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.